So let me start out by explaining some basic facts about the university's equal opportunity non-discrimination policy and the way it's applied to our student organizations. All student groups at Vanderbilt who wish to become a registered student organization, or RSO, must complete an application process through the Office of the Dean of Students. To qualify for this status, the leader and the advisor of the group must certify each year that the group complies with the university's non-discrimination policy. And the non-discrimination policy is reproduced at the top of the affirmation form. We also require each group to submit its constitution or bylaws or both for annual review in order to stand for RSO status. The university's policy, as Jim alluded to, is an AllComers policy, or an open to all policy. Any university student in good standing must be eligible for membership in any RSO that he or she has a sincere interest in. Students may not be excluded from an RSO based on status, and we can include such issues as race, nationality, or sexual orientation. Nor may they be excluded based on belief. When it comes to leadership, the same basic principle must apply. That is, all members must be eligible for leadership positions. Eligible for leadership positions. We will not accept two classes of membership among students at this university. We work too hard to get you to come here. We will not close the door on opportunities once you arrive. As I hope what I've just said resonates at least with some of you, I want you to understand this policy is not an attempt to single out particular student groups or to limit freedom of belief or expression on our campus. Quite the contrary, its purpose is to promote equal opportunity for all, for every student at Vanderbilt. Our trustees, our chancellor, General Counsel Williams, and I are confident that this policy will both encourage freedom of belief and maybe even greater dialogue among students who have, on occasion, different or even conflicting viewpoints. You may hear the argument that Vanderbilt is discriminating against religious groups. I want to assure you that, in my opinion, we are not. And I might add that I'm a participant in one of the religious student organizations, excuse me, that has difficulty with this policy. More than 30 religious groups are in compliance with our policy and are registered student organizations currently. A handful of religious groups have indicated they will not comply or they're finding it difficult to comply. And at this point, I want to tell you that beginning last fall, several of us have worked with these groups, with leadership, with student leaders, and our goal at the very beginning and our goal today is to retain every registered student organization this year into our next academic year. That is our goal. It may be an unattainable goal, but it's a sincere effort on our part. If we have a religious group that refuses to comply because it wishes to restrict membership or leadership to students who are gay, of a different race, or even serving as a military reservist, that group would be denied status as a registered student organization. Likewise, if a non-religious student group wanted to restrict its membership or eligibility for leadership based on a particular belief. For example, acceptance of some tenets prescribed by that group. It too would be denied registered student status. Our policy makes no distinction between religious student organizations and other kinds of student groups. I also know that some have raised the possibility that the university is attempting to dictate who can lead a registered student organization. And I want to address this very clearly and very forcefully with 3 words. We are not. We are not. We are only saying that each of you, you, or you, or you, if you are a member of a group, based on your performance in that group, it is your right as a Vanderbilt student to be eligible for election as a leader. That is a bedrock principle at this university. We trust our students to elect their leaders. We have great faith in the defining characteristics of our students and their ability to make good judgments. If, as typically happens, they elect leaders who share the defining characteristics or beliefs of the group, that by itself is perfectly consistent with the university's non-discrimination policy, as long as all members were given a genuine chance to compete for the leadership positions.
I'm Jordan Rogers, quarterback, junior here at member of FCA since I've been here for the last 2 years at Vanderbilt. And Provost, I just wanted to say something to your statement, which I feel like you've been misstating. You keep talking about this number, 13,000 students. I don't think that 13,000 students are all involved in an organization, so I think that's an overstatement. As well as you saying that to belittle the fact that there's 220 people in this room. I don't want you to underestimate the hundreds of people that didn't get through the doors.
I'm not.
So I think the people that share these beliefs are a lot bigger percent than you think, and that's not even to what I want to talk about right now.
Fine.
The fact is that FCA, as a national organization, its leaders need to affirm their belief in Jesus Christ as their Savior. And this affirmation is so that they can teach others. And our vision, our mission as an organization is to spread the gospel through our athletes, through our coaches, throughout this campus. And so by the fact that you are, and we're fine with having an election. We're fine. We love when everyone comes. As we've said before, we have no discrimination for anybody to walk through our doors. But the fact that what we're talking about is restricting who is able to be a leader completely undermines the mission and our vision and the direction of every single one of these organizations that all share a direction. These organizations were meant for a purpose. Each one, whether it's FCA, whether it's the Catholics, whatever it is, there's a purpose. And having restrictions on who can be the leader, I think, belittles the entire fact of having organizations. Because these students that come in want to go to FCA or want to go to one of these organizations to learn more about it, to be a part of this because of the Christian faith, because they want to learn more about it. So I feel that if someone that doesn't share the faith is teaching, then what's the point of even having these organizations?
Jordan, let me just ask a couple questions. In your scenario, can a person who does not affirm Jesus Christ be a leader of your organization?
No, sir.
Okay. Would you suggest does that in any way, shape, form, or fashion discriminate against that person?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the entire purpose of the organization is to teach people this faith. So, what is the point of someone, and I totally understand about what you've been harping on about missing a transformational leader, or some people that might not, you think, fit the exact mold can be great leaders, great. But the purpose of the organization is to teach this faith. Fellowship of Christian Athletes. There are hundreds of organizations. So, the fact that we are not going to change the fact that you have to affirm your faith in Jesus Christ to be a teacher, to be a leader, to teach new people that are of any faith that come through our doors. We don't feel that is discriminating. We don't feel that's a problem, as I think a lot of these groups do. And I think that undermines the entire mission of every organization on campus.
Well, I think as I said, I think that's where the university has to come to a position of understanding. I mean, the fact of the matter is, and that's why I say I think that these things get to be very complex. And part of the reasons why I think there's been so much misunderstanding and so much time in there, this is a complex issue. When this issue first came up, my colleagues will remember, as I sat at the table, I said, this may be one of the major issues we face as a university. This is not something that is easily solved. And the fact of the matter is, the discrimination that you speak of, I mean, if you've agreed it's discrimination, is not an illegal discrimination. It's not illegal. But the university is going to have to make a decision on what side of the line they want to be. Do they want to say it's totally all comers, or do they want to basically say, well, we understand the concept of some faith-based organizations, and we agree that we will create an exception for them either by membership, as some would want, or at leadership. And I just think that's something that this university, at this point in time, has made a choice. We are here to articulate what that policy is, to hear what you all have said, and trust me, we will take all of this back, as the provost said, and I'm sure all of you will, and make sure that the chancellor and the rest of the board and the administration hears what you said. But I do think at the end of the day, that's where the issue is. That's where the issue is.
Like this is more of you listening and telling us where we're wrong, as opposed to you being to accept some of these
no, not it. No.
Because every time the model is telling us why we're wrong and pointing out these things.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I think we could frame this in this way. We may have two wrong policies or two right policies. An all-comers policy, to many of us, is a right policy. A policy that allows an exception for religious groups, to many of us, is a right policy. If those two policies cannot coexist, we're going to have to choose one of those. So if we've given the impression to you all that your belief and your faith is wrong, I apologize. That's not what we're here to do. We came here to say, here's the policy of the university. Let's discuss it. I think we've cleared up some misconceptions, and there may be more. But this is not, I'm right, you're wrong, you're right, I'm wrong. We both have beliefs, and that's the great part about America, great part about universities in particular, is people are going to have different beliefs. When those beliefs collide, sometimes you can't exist with both of them in the same space. And then you have to make a determination. Trust me, we're not here to basically come in here. And like I said, if we gave that impression, I personally apologize. I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to say my way is the right way. What we're saying is this is the university policy. This is what it means. This is why we have that policy. Here's our reasoning for it. And we want to hear what all of you have to say about that. And we will take it back and deal with it.
So a specific example, under your policy for our organization, if we hold elections, we have an all-comers policy, yet our leaders are, as required by our national organization, to affirm their belief in Jesus Christ as our Savior, affirm their faith. Is that in violation of the policy? Although they have just as equal a chance, but once they get to that position of leadership, they have the choice to say, here's my affirmation, or no, I'm not going to be a leader. Is that
can that person stand for leadership?
They are eligible for leadership.
And if your organization, if they could stand for leadership, and if your organization or members of your organization decided under your rules to vote for them, even though they haven't affirmed it, that person would be the leader of your organization, correct?
They wouldn't be voting. So
open election, right?
Open election. Through these hoops of your policy, just as a facade, what is the point of that? We're jumping through the hoops of electing or having elections even though they're not going to be elected because of our beliefs. What is the point of that?
The point of it is, I think what you're taking, I think this is what Richard has said, you're probably right that they won't be elected, but you may be on the offhand wrong. There may be a person who can stand up there and run for leadership and convince enough people to vote for him. And on that one chance, you now have given that opportunity, the ability to work within your organization. I mean, I think what you're suggesting is because that person probably couldn't win the election, why should we even let them run? And there's been too many times in the history of this country where people won elections who most people didn't think would happen when they first started.
It's not about the coming up to the election, the fact that they might or might not be elected. It's the direction and vision and mission of each one of these organizations that they don't fulfill. The direction, the purpose of these organizations.
Okay. I think we've actually clarified a difference here. Sir.
I'm Kyle Westman. I'm a sophomore and football player. My question.
If you're not,
my question. Obviously, there's a lot of students here to give their perspective and represent our student body. My question's more about athletics. This year was nice. We actually went 6-7, made it to a bowl game, and like Coach Williams said, was a big contributor in hiring Coach Franklin. And Coach Franklin, one of the biggest things he said is it's a lot easier to win when you have good players. I was asked to work on the player panel these past 2 weekends, which is like an interview with all the parents on our big recruiting weekends. And the by far most asked question was about like religious groups. And FCA being a big one of ours, it was easy to sit up there and tell them about Lance Brown, who is our religious like leader for FCA, and he leads our men's Bible study for our football team, and he also works with the who leads the women's and Ginger, yeah, and like we have soccer team, cheerleaders, football, baseball, all here, and we can all attest that when we're bringing in better recruits, it makes playing a lot easier and winning a lot easier. And I was curious as to how you thought about this affecting athletics, because it'll be hard when we have parents that want their kid to come here because we offer a lot of Christian religious groups or whatever religion it might be, but they're registered and organized groups instead of just like we can't really talk about them. And I was just wondering if you had thought about that because, like I said, the most asked question was about FCA, men's Bible study, and all the religious things we have to offer here. And if you have to tell the parents that you can't really talk about that, or it's not a Christian group, it might turn a lot of recruits in any sport from coming here. Because me being a sophomore, when I was being recruited, one of the biggest things I looked for was a good Christian family. And I'm a strong Christian, and it helped a lot coming here with Brother Brown, as we call him on the football team. And it helped having a lot of that support here. And I was just curious if you had thought about that.
Down here.
Thanks. My name is Joseph Williams, and I feel old. I graduated here in May of 2009. As many of these people don't know, because of my aforementioned oldness, I had the honor of being student body president at Vanderbilt. I was vice president of Bucks. I was in Bible studies for Campus Crusade, RUF, went to Vandy Catholic events, went to many Jewish organization events, Muslim Student Association events. And now I have the pleasure of being in Christian Legal Society at Vanderbilt Law School. This is an emotional thing for me because I love Vanderbilt a lot. But it's unfortunate that, I'm all for an AllComers policy. Our faith, the Christian faith, is all about a symbol, the cross, which is the ultimate AllComers policy in my book. And it's unfortunate to me that seemingly this policy, Provost McCarty, there are a few people I have more respect for than you, but, many of these organizations that are at risk of not being officially registered, they were told 6 months ago to sit down with the dean of students, that a compromise would come out. These groups have been willing to massage the language of their constitutions while still maintaining the integrity of their beliefs and what they believe in. And yet, time and time again, the administration seemingly just comes back and says that's not enough. And it's just frustrating to me that this is a policy where seemingly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been told this, that let's say we did sign the dotted line and we agreed to it. Then, correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't it be possible for a charge of discrimination to come against any of these organizations if someone joined the group? Would be religious or political. If a Republican joined the College Democrats, ran for president of the College Democrats, clearly I would expect the College Democrats to not vote for them for president because there are probably some tenets there that aren't shared, some basic core beliefs. And I would, I'm a Republican, but I would vote for the Democrats to do that because that's what this country is founded on. And it seems to me that a faith-based organization should be able to vote and will vote. I agree. Let's give it to the students. I love democracy. I love freedom. And I love non-discrimination. But it seems to me that I would want a group to elect their officers based on tenets of beliefs. What else would a faith-based organization be able to elect their officers off of? And I don't want, I'm almost done, I promise. I don't, you too, guys. I don't want this to be a community with culture wars. I've said that from the beginning when I sat down with the Dean of Students and when I sat down with you, Provost McCarty. I was like, I don't want a culture war. I don't want this to be us versus them. Because, gosh darn it, this is the United States of America, and we can agree to disagree, and we can all get along. We just want a seat at the table. We want to be able to elect our leaders based on beliefs. And I don't want to sign that line and, possibly be called on for discrimination simply because, we vote on our beliefs. And so would we possibly be able to come under discrimination charges if someone lost an election and then said, I wasn't voted in because I don't agree with their core beliefs? Because how are you going to regulate, upwards of 150 people's voting?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Joseph?
Yeah.
Go ahead. It's not a violation. Yeah. Joe, I think you said the key word in that, two key words. You said that they ran for election. And the fact of the matter, as long as there's an open election, you're not saying that a person who didn't have those core beliefs could not run for the office, correct? They could run for that leadership, right?
Well, I'm saying under this policy, if we for the internet people, under hope you're having fun. Under this policy, if you were to sign the line and we were to say, okay, we're not going to choose our leaders, which is what you're saying is the AllComers Policy. We are not. If we sign the line and say we're not going to choose our leaders based on religious belief, then
It doesn't say that.
What's it say then?
Joseph, you're misstating the facts. And I will say something to you, Joseph, and I want everyone to hear this. I love you like a son. What we are saying, Joseph, is that we believe in inspired leadership. And sometimes you will be surprised by someone who doesn't quite fit the phenotype, in this case, of the Christian Legal Society. And I want that person to have the chance to earn your vote. You're telling me that you're worried about a non-discrimination charge, a discrimination charge. And what I'm telling you is, if the person is eligible to vote and loses in a fair election because of the internal requirements of its members, that is not discrimination. That is simply not discrimination. That's a misstatement of what we're trying to achieve. But I want you to remember one thing if you forget everything else about tonight. And I feel like you're running for office again, Joseph. And if I could vote, you got my vote. We want you to be open to that rare individual. That's all we're saying. And I'm telling you, there are people like that on this campus. Give them a chance.
You know, I would just change one word that you said. I would say the internal views, not the internal requirements.
The internal views,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
so the fact of the matter is if two individuals decide to run and one shares the beliefs of the majority of the organization and the other one doesn't share the views, they both can run. And you're absolutely right. More than likely, the person that shares them will win. I don't see that as a charge of discrimination. What would be the charge of discrimination is if you didn't let that other person openly run for the office. That's all we're saying. So no, I don't see that as a discriminatory charge the way you phrased it.
Over the last 9 months, there's a lot of different things that have been said, and I agree with a lot of that. A lot of how you guys have described what this policy would actually mean. But I think to Justin's question a good bit ago, you admitted that there's been some miscommunication, not necessarily saying the wrong thing, just things have changed, hard to communicate. But you're asking us to adopt this policy without knowing the scope of it in writing, and try it out for a year. And then you guys, once we've worked all that out, to be able to put on paper and defining the scope of the non-discrimination policy.
Sure.
My question is why the onus is on us to trust you for a year or however long to work it out. Instead of just asking you to maybe wait for a year to change things, you guys decide what you want the scope of this policy to be, put it specifically in writing, and then we can decide whether we can deal with that. But I don't know if it's necessarily fair to ask us to agree to a policy that you haven't decided yourselves what the scope and what the application and what all these different things, that have been said in the last 9 months, some of them final, some of them not, and they've changed. We want to get them on paper before we make a decision.
I would submit to you, and this is a very good point you just made, that it is virtually impossible to put down in a single document all of the permutations that we've already talked about tonight in one tightly written policy. This is why we're saying the best way forward is dialogue. We have not, by the way, we have not changed our policy. We have discovered that some of our beliefs about practices in our student organizations was inaccurate. And we've all learned from this. And we learned from it because a student that I know and respect deeply filed a complaint of discrimination. So this opened up a full-scale review of all of our student organizations. We have a policy, it hasn't changed. But the permutations that we have to deal with, and it's the royal we, because Dean Banda's sitting in the back, he and his staff have to deal with this. If we simply put down something that said, yes, you're okay, no, you're not, we would be doing a disservice to many of our registered student organizations. We want to work with you. We want to help. We want to keep you on campus. I can't convey that more strongly than I just did. So the policy that is described at the top of the affirmation form will be reproduced again this year. And we're holding this meeting well in advance of the beginning of affirmation time right after spring break. We'll continue to talk about this.
I think what a lot of these groups want, in that conversation is to be able to know what the scope of that is before they make a decision. And they can't, in good conscience, decide to adhere to a policy.
Right.
Being in word the same thing, but being applied in a different way. Can't agree to it until they know what it is. And I just don't think that's fair to ask of these student groups.
Well, we need to know how the student groups conduct themselves. And we didn't have the full information for a variety of reasons. And now we have an indication that we need to have a fuller conversation all around this non-discrimination.
We have all intention by the time it's for you guys to affirm to have that written out. So before
the registration date for student organizations for next year, we will have in writing a very clear explanation of the application of this policy and what the scope of it is. Is that a guarantee?
To the best of our ability.
Okay.
Yeah. Clear as
And if it isn't done well, you need to let us know.
Yeah,
And we'll work at it more.
I'm going to say that again has been clarifying, although the last time I said that, people walked out. But, you know, to carry that message back, if you can, that you have gotten a commitment here to try to show you where the lines are, although with 300 and plus groups, there may be some unique features to particular charters.
What I'm a little confused is, so say an organization is non-compliant, so therefore next year or whenever is not an official organization. What are the potential consequences of the students of the individuals of a former organization, I guess, secretly meet on campus using Vanderbilt facilities? I mean, I guess I'm a little worried about this because I remember like 3 years ago when I went to China, I experienced the same thing where like we were associated with the underground church, and the Communist police actually caught us, and we had to hide out in a steel factory for the rest of the week, and we were pretty close to getting deported. Yeah.
Well, let me just say this. We will not deport you to Duke University. I promise.
And more seriously, what are the consequences for groups that don't
There's
comply?
There's a list of privileges that registered student organizations get, and a non-registered student organization would not be able to get those privileges, if you like. I think that the one thing that you need to understand is because you're not a registered student organization doesn't mean you can't associate with each other. And it doesn't mean you can't associate with each other on this campus. It's the fact of the matter is, you know, I think the one thing is as we listen and we talk more and more, it really does come down to a balancing act. And I guess the university, as the university, has to make a decision. And I think what we're seeing is we're seeing the concept of all comers, as we've tried to articulate it, and we're seeing people who very, very strongly believe, well, I may be able to go to a certain point on all comers as it relates to membership, but not leadership. Others who say, well, I'm not even sure I can go to all comers even at the level of membership. And I think the university has to come to a point of, quite honestly, and of course when decisions like these are made, because in a large degree, a true total all-comers policy is going to be mutually exclusive to basically making exceptions to that policy. And so I think the university just has to be careful and deliberate in making a decision, okay, which one does this university want to be? And at the end of the day, once that decision is made, however that decision is made, that's what the university chooses. You know, I find it very interesting that while I see both sides, while we talk about all comers, a lot of people are very clear and articulate on the fact that, but I have a belief, and my belief controls who I associate with, my decision making, what my organization should be. But by the same token, what I'm saying is many of those times, if your organization has the ability to say no to this person, then that organization is discriminating against that person. And it may even be legal discrimination. It may not be illegal discrimination. And I think the university just has to get to a point of saying, okay, which one do we value greater? Do we value the all-comers non-discrimination, or do we value having something short of that? And you know, many universities, and many of you know this, have done just that. I think that at Vanderbilt, we've taken the position, unlike the University of Florida, unlike Ohio State, unlike a number of universities, we have not agreed that we would carve out that exception, either for leadership or membership. It's a decision this university has to make. And I don't think those two things can coexist. I don't think they can coexist.
Right here in the center, with the striped shirt, gentlemen.
Hi, my name is AC Bryans. I was just wondering, okay, so this is much more maybe possible than someone running for office that doesn't share beliefs. I don't feel like that would be too much of a problem anyways, and they probably wouldn't get voted in like we just said. But let's say like someone in the Vanderbilt Muslim Student Association were to convert to Christianity like over the summer, but they were an elected officer before then. But what if they decided that they wanted to preach Christianity to the Muslim Association and they were still an officer? Would the Muslim Association be able to like ask them to step down? That'd be discrimination on because they didn't share the beliefs, right?
I'm not sure. Can you go back over that? Because I think I lost one part of your train.
So basically, like,
person is elected as the leader.
If I'm the president of a, I mean, it could be any student. Let's just say it's the Muslim Students Association.
But you're the elected leader.
I'm the elected leader, okay. And I share the beliefs when I'm elected. So obviously, I'm going to be elected, and then over the summer, I convert to Christianity, Judaism, any other religion, and I come back, and I don't want to step down. I would rather share my beliefs with the rest of the fraternity, I mean, or whatever, and so, and then would they be allowed to ask me to step down based on my beliefs because I don't share the beliefs? Because I'm not going to voluntarily step down because from what I believe, I would like to share that.
Yeah, it would seem to me that the way you've described this is that if the organization had the power to come in and say, we found out that you converted to another religion, you now have to step down. Yes, that would be a charge of discrimination. Now, within the bylaws of an organization, I would think an organization would have some sort of provisions that actually deal with impeachment or taking people out of offices, but they can't be on a discriminatory basis. But then that would be the same sort of thing that if you got a Republican, a Democratic situation where a person is a Democrat and wins the leadership of the college Democrats and then decides later they want to be a Republican, the fact of the matter is the organization can't just walk in there after they've elected that person unless the election has something to do with fraud. So if they fraudulently presented themselves, you may have a charge. But other than that, I think, yes, that person is the elected leader and can only be removed based on the bylaws of that organization for removal.
Let me just say that that's not so far-fetched because one of our parachurch leaders described a situation very similar to the one you just described. A Christian student ran for office, was elected leader, and over the summer renounced all of his Christian beliefs, did not convert to another religion. And honestly, the organization didn't know what to do. And it's a very difficult situation. It may occur, but you know, the group can reassemble too, form a new group. That's always an option.
I'm Justin Gunter. I'm the president of CLS at the law school. My question is that based on the entire time we've been working through this issue, for me personally, ever since April when the review first came around, the groups that have been affected have felt like they've had a hard time just simply understanding what the university requires. You know, first we had this idea that we just have to change these Bible verses from our Constitution and everything was okay. We could still have religious requirements. Well, then at the end of the summer we were told, no, that's not the case. Then, as we've already addressed tonight, I received an email, which is public information, from the university stating you cannot have that another member of the administration has also said in public that if a group of individuals decided based on religious motivations they're not going to vote for an officer, that would also be in violation of the university's policy. And as the board has articulated tonight, that's not true, that individuals can vote even using purely religious motivations. More than anything, we have been asking the university repeatedly to publish in a written form exactly the scope of this policy. First, so that we can be sure this is where the policy stops. Many individuals have commented, including professors at this university and members of the First Amendment Center, this policy is a line drawing exercise. There's no exact reason it had to have been drawn here. We are afraid that if it's discriminatory to have Christian leaders, why isn't it discriminatory to have a Christian Bible study or to be a Christian organization? If we could have a non-discrimination policy, and as Mr. Williams has articulated, that's a very specific legal term of art under CLS v. Martinez. Now, CLS v. Martinez said that all-comers policies are great. But the key holding in Martinez was, if you have an all-comers policy, it has to apply to every student organization. And as we've already talked about tonight, we've already concluded that Vanderbilt's all-comers policy does not apply to its fraternities and sororities. If we knew that ahead of time, we could have articulated this and seen how this all-comers policy really isn't an all-comers policy at all, and really had this constructive dialogue all along, instead of just coming here last minute tonight and trying to say, where are we? We've been going through this for 9 months, and still it seems like we're seeing new information and new argumentation, having trouble responding to that as we go along.
Let me respond. Let me respond to that by basically saying we understand, and one of the reasons why the chancellor called for a town meeting and other dialogues is to try to get a clear picture of what the issues are. And so on behalf of the university, if you've been getting mixed signals, let me apologize on behalf of the university. But what the university is trying to get those signals straight and trying to make sure everybody understands where we are and where we're going. I want to also say one of the reasons why we basically have allowed the organizations who appear to not comply to maintain every right they had as a registered student organization is just because of that. And so really at this point in time, no organization has been disenfranchised by that, and we are trying to make sure that we get everybody on the same page. So once again, if you've been getting mixed signals, and I trust that you have from what you said, we apologize for that.
I'm actually calling on behalf of the Vanderbilt call center, the Commodore call center. Candace actually works there with me. I don't believe anybody else here does. I don't know if they do. And I'm kind of just calling to voice a lot of opinions expressed by most of the alumni. And I have actually been working there. I think Candace might be the only person that works there longer than I have been. And I have recently made it to the top of the leaderboard for most money donated to Vanderbilt University in my name. So.
Let's up.
And for that, most of the people I call are the big donors. So I call the A&S cabinet, I call the Peabody Roundtable, I call those guys. And, average gifts somewhere around $2,000, $3,000, $10,000 a year. And I, for 5-6 months now, I've gotten at least every night that I work, 1, 2, as many as 6 one night people that have, denounced the university, decided that they will not give to the university until they take a few steps back in their views on political correctness. And I was kind of wondering, I don't mean to bring money into the conversation, but I believe that our alumni are people that should be largely valued. And I was just wondering how we might play the game between political correctness and alumni support.
Well, that's a great question. First of all, thanks for working in the call center. It's very important. We need to get our participation rates up among our alumni.
A follow-up, if I may, to the question I asked earlier. Legal considerations aside, how can it be just that a fraternity or sorority has the right to codify in writing a qualification that someone must be a certain gender, which someone can't help, in order to be a member of the organization, whereas a religious organization does not apparently have the right to codify in writing that in order to be a leader of the organization, they have to have certain beliefs which they can help.
You also use gender in a relatively restricted bimodal fashion, and I want you to understand that it doesn't work that way, and what we are saying is we're standing behind the rights of students to seek membership in Greek organizations, and they may not fit the definition of gender that you just explicated. We choose to have social fraternities and sororities on the campus, and what we try and do is have equal opportunities available. We are open to other models of Greek organizations. We would welcome our students to be creative. We're not stuck with what we have now. There is a lot of room for innovation. We now have a fraternity, I believe, that is openly inclusive of gay men. And I think that's a step forward. So we're trying to be open and expansive, but the driving force in that direction is our student body.
My name's Stephanie Brennan, and I'm a senior here. And my question has to deal with the AllComers Policy that I know we've talked a lot about. And we said that all registered student organizations have to abide by an AllComers Policy. I don't want to specifically call out Greek organizations because I feel like they do serve a valuable purpose on our campus. But there are several students at Vanderbilt who meet all the qualifications and go through the recruitment process, but then either don't receive a bid to the particular sorority or fraternity they want to join, or don't receive a bid at all. So is that a violation of the AllComers Policy? And if that's not a violation, how can that be considered a consistent application of the policy?
Whoa.
Yeah, I think you've raised a very important question. And the fact of the matter is, I think that, and we have discussed this, that is something that this university really has to look at very closely. And my view of it is, it once again comes back to that issue. If what we want to have is a true AllComers Policy, I think you've raised an extremely important point, which we are going to have to get our hands around. Absolutely. And so I think that to the fact that Greek organizations will not allow people to join for whatever reasons runs afoul of a true AllComers Policy. And then I think that the other side of that is if, in fact, we take the choice as a university to create that exception, then we are duty-bound to look at other exceptions as well.
I think a lot of what the problem we're hearing here tonight is not so much what's happening right now. I think we all can agree that should this policy be implemented as it is tomorrow, everyone on campus change their constitutions, whatever have you done to be right with the school. For the next few years, no, leaders would not be elected purely based off of these new criteria. That we'd still be running the old ways, same as usual. I think a lot of the fear is what's going to happen 5, 10, 15 years from today when we're no longer here, but we're still alumni of this campus and we still want to love what this campus represents. We want it to represent what we believe. Yeah. If I may for a second, I had a similar situation back in my high school where there was a policy implemented decades ago, very similar to this, where leadership and membership of organizations could not be discriminatory. It was done with the best of intentions. It worked for a long time. However, by the time I was a student at that high school, we were no longer allowed to have any Christian meetings on campus. We could not only official meetings, we could not have a group of more than 3 Christian individuals in the same room by themselves with an open Bible. And that was by the time I was a freshman at that high school. I think that what we're facing right now are a lot of students who fear that in the future this school could go in that direction, and we're trying to avoid that early before we set a precedent.